Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial. Today I am going to open up a chapter on brute forcing methods, I would say. And these will include, here I will include how to crack hashes, how you can actually attack a website with a brute force, how you can perform a brute force attack on a website in order to try to guess the combination of usernames and passwords. But more importantly, you do need to know that there is a way to crack those hashes and how you can crack them. So basically I will go over a couple of tools. One of them will be Find My Hash, which is an online tool. Also another one which is extremely popular, it's called John the Ripper, and then we'll jump into Hydra, which actually enables you to attempt multiple usernames and passwords on a website. And in such a way brute force them. If it manages to guess them, you will log in, although it does require some rather painful parameters, so we'll see how that goes. It can be a drag with parameters sometimes because you need to figure them out in a website, but usually everybody pretty much gets the hang of it. They try it a couple of times and eventually it works out. Fortunately for us, the very first tool that I'm going to try today is rather simple, plain text, plain tool, and it's called Find My Hash. Find My Hash dash dash help. You will see even the help menu doesn't have that many options. So these are examples, these are valid options. Look at this. So it only has 3 valid options. It says if your hash cannot be cracked, search it on Google and show all the results. Note, this option only works with -H, one hash input option. For files, you can have a file of hashes. So there are a few things to take into consideration when creating a file of different hashes. So it says one hash per line, nothing in between. So you type in one hash, you press enter, you copy paste the next one, press enter, and so on and so forth. And all of them have to be of the same type. Up above, straight in the beginning, you have types of hashes which are supported. So MD4, MD5, I don't know, Ghost, Shot, 512, and so on and so forth. So these are the ones that are supported. Any other, I'm afraid it's not going to work with this program. Here you have the general syntax, and the general syntax you can disregard this portion of the syntax. You don't need to type this in. You can just type in find my hash and then the rest. So let's just go down. Excellent. Clear the screen. Also, another thing to take into consideration that you have a lot of websites out there which you can use to attempt to decrypt your stuff. Here I'm using like md5lab.com and I've requested that it decrypts a certain hash. The hash that I've actually asked it to decrypt is hey223 exclamation mark, and this is it. Now, it is highly unlikely that you will be able to decrypt this on your local computer, primarily because it contains 3 sets of you have letters, you have numbers, and then you have these signs as well, which is an exclamation mark. If it was hey223, it would probably break it, but with exclamation marks, it's going to be a bit more difficult. Anyway, I'm just going to Control C this. I want to save this to see if it actually manages to finish later, so I can show you. Hey223, and because you should always remember that you have a ton of resources out there on the net that you can utilize, and those machines are probably a lot faster than your local machines as they are server machines. So if you can find something for free, great. If you can't, oh well. Anyway, let's go and type in find my hash. Oops. Find my hash, and we're gonna say it's gonna be MD5 as this is a really common one. This is I do believe that this is the one used in the database that we've previously cracked. So if you extract hashes such as those from a database, you can crack them via this algorithm, in this fashion. So -H for hash, and now we need to go ahead and create a hash. I don't know, what are we going to type in here? Let's use something simple to begin with, and then later on we can use a more complex things. but I want to primarily use something simple now so that it finishes in some reasonable amount of time, as opposed to having to wait for an hour or something like that. So let's just type in hey. That's quite simple, and we'll try. Let's just see if this one works out, and then we can try another one. I think this one should go relatively fast. And there we go. It is analyzing it with different things. We're going straight through. You can see the sites here as well. So it's going, and it's done. So the following hashes were cracked, and this is so weird that somebody was lazy to, somebody actually didn't bother to put an if statement somewhere. But oh well, the tool is free, so my credits to the authors of the tool. But a single if statement could actually fix this. You wouldn't have, if you have a single hash, it should be written the following hash was cracked. And if you have multiple hashes, it can say the following hashes were cracked. Anyway, that really doesn't matter. It has no effect to the functioning of our tool. And you can see, surely enough, there's a hash here, and you can see the word that was hashed as well. So no big deal there. Let's try something a bit more complex. Is this done? No. It's probably not gonna finish, but anyway, what the hell, I might as well try. 1, 2, 3. Let's try hey 1, 2, 3. So letters and numbers, and increased length as well. Paste, press enter, and it's going. This might take a bit longer. However, I just want to show you if it becomes too long before I actually finish what I have to say. If it continues after I said what I wanted to say, I'm gonna stop it. But no, apparently no. It's so a 6-character password, including numbers and digits, is cracked. Okay, let's just try one more for the fun of it. So hey 1, 2, 3. I don't know. Let's leave 1, 2, 3. Let's just increase this to hey with capital letters, and let's add an exclamation mark. I purely doubt it's going to be able to crack this. Maybe because I've used hey and 1, 2, 3, but let's see. If it does crack it, I'm going to be amazed. Because just adding those strange characters that you generally don't see in passwords or usernames, like exclamation marks, asterisk signs, greater than, lesser than, etc., you really make it a lot more difficult for any sort of brute forcing software to actually crack it, primarily because, okay, so if you have letters and numbers, you have a certain amount of you have a fixed amount of characters. So it's a smaller number, and if you use characters, oh man, that increases the amount of possible combinations exponentially. Because I don't know, you have like you have 10 possible numbers, and then you have the English alphabet plus English alphabet. But if you have all these numbers and all these other signs like quotation marks, single quotation marks, double quotation marks, parentheses, brackets, curly brackets, percentages, ampersand signs, slashes, backslashes, pipes, yeah. The amount of combination is staggering, and yeah, it's unlikely it will be cracked. Just like with this one that we're doing now, we are unable to crack it, even though it's fairly simple. It just has an exclamation mark here. But people, as I've said, generally in a significant amount of cases, definitely above 50%, do not use these sort of markations in their passwords, primarily because it's hard to remember. And a lot of people don't tend to log in these days into anything. They just stay login, or Firefox remembers their passwords, or Chrome, or whatever. And they don't want such passwords. I mean, this exclamation mark is not a general thing, trust me. People generally don't put it. It would usually be, hey, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to get cracked. But in any case, it looks like that it won't actually manage to crack it. If it does, I will let you guys know, but I purely doubt it that it will. Usually, I do believe that this is usually the last one that runs, but in any case, I want to bid you farewell, and in the next tutorial, we will actually use some other tools. I do believe it's going to be John the Ripper. Okay, so there we go. It wasn't actually cracked. Uh, yeah, it can't actually crack this one, but let's see if we can do some Google searching with it. Up, up, up. No, 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 don't. Let's see. How does the syntax for this one go? Again, you go for it. The hash wasn't found in any database. Maybe Google has an idea. Google doesn't have any results. So sorry. Okay. So yeah, you're not going to be able to crack this hash, but what you can do is basically copy it. This is one more thing that I've done here, but here's what you can do as well to duplicate the procedure. Just copy it here, and then see what Google has to say for real. So there's an md5decoder.org, and that seems to be the only site with this particular hash. And this is in some foreign language, but it doesn't really matter. Control F, hashes are universal in all languages. Apparently, nope, this is not where we need to be. But if you have a website like md5lab.com, you can copy paste it there. I can't copy paste it actually here now because there's this cracking process underway. But if you are using this site for the first time, you're gonna get a prompt here. Just copy paste the hash and click on decrypt. Maybe they will have more luck than you. Anyway, in the follow-up tutorial, as I said, we'll try out some other tools and see how our luck serves us there. Until then, I bid you all farewell, and I hope to see you there. Okay, so due to some reviews that I've gotten, I am not going to be drilling the hello everybody sentence anymore, or I will try not to do it anyway. But rather instead, I'm just gonna jump into the tutorial itself right away. So today we're gonna do something different from what we've done thus far. This is a common problem encountered by tech support people in companies or forensics in the police or something of a kind, or private companies as well. You generally get a machine, if you're working the forensics, whether you are working for the police force or whether you are working for a private company that is a contractor for the police or something of a kind, you will inevitably encounter system passwords that you will need to bypass. That can be extremely problematic. For example, if somebody has encrypted their drives, it is with a strong enough encryption key, it is unlikely that you will ever manage to pull anything out of those drives. Now, we're not going to be dealing with the encrypted drives today, as that is pretty much impossible, or highly unlikely, I would say. Rather, instead, we will be dealing with system passwords. Now, usually what the forensics would do is insert a bootable CD or a USB and boot it from there. However, a lot of the systems, you get logged in by some default user. For example, my default user here is test. It doesn't have any root privileges of whatsoever, but I am able to actually do some basic operations on the system which do not require root access. Now, from this user mode, I want to acquire a root password so that I can actually control the system to the fullest of extents and see what is going on there. Now, I can't actually control the system from a bootable CD. Rather, instead, I can control that particular system which runs from a bootable CD and then access the files here. And this is also one of the methods that is very nice. You can extract password hashes and then crack them later on or something of a kind. But today, what I wanted to show you, this particular method, is when people forget their passwords or something of a kind, you don't necessarily want to go into through the trouble of actually booting from a CD, then getting a hash, and then after you've gotten the hash, you then need to crack it, and so on and so forth. Rather, instead, I will show you a method where you can obtain root access without that by just rebooting the system and changing a few things there. And then afterwards, we will use that method, or we will use the one with the CD to acquire the hash as well. And then I will show you how to crack that hash with John the Ripper. Anyway, without further ado, let's just go ahead and reboot the system. So I'm just logged in as test here. Let's just type in reboot. Oops, I do need to, I can just use the graphical interface to reboot the system. Or you can just physically turn the machine off and on. Oh, come on, where are you? Hibernate, restart. As I said, you can physically turn the machine on and off, and that's gonna qualify as a restart. So, okay, it is now in the process of booting. Grub is loading, and immediately after the grub loads, move the arrow up and down so that the timer actually stops. Go ahead and press. You see there are these options here. It says use up and down arrow keys to select which entry is highlighted. Press enter to boot the selected OS, or E to edit those commands before booting. So what we want to do is press E. And there's a whole bunch of things here. It's kind of difficult to see. I can't make it any clearer for you, unfortunately. There's one line which is very clear where I am now. It says echo loading Linux 318 Kali AMD 64. I'm sure you see that one. Down below immediately there is Linux/boot VM Linux 318 something. And down below that line, you have this number string. Well, it's the same line, I think. Let me just move the arrow. Come on. Excellent, there we go. So it's the same line, basically. It just can't fit into the screen. Maybe on your computer it will. So there is this long number. It says here 957-828 and so on and so forth. And after that line, immediately it says RO. Due to the background, it's a little bit difficult to see, but on your systems, you will be able to see it with more clarity. But anyway, after this number, 957-82 something, there is a space, and then there is RO. Delete the RO, type in RW. Go to the end of that line, don't change anything else. Go to the end, press space, type in init, INIT equals / bin, so bin /bash. So it's BASH. Excellent. So let's see how do we actually save this. Press Ctrl C or F10 to boot. F10, where is the F10? Excellent. So I just pressed F10 and it's booting up now. Let's see what happens. Excellent, there we go. So I am prompted with a root shell. See, I am root on my system now. You can see in the left corner of the screen that I am root here. Of course, this would be in full screen mode, but you can't actually load VirtualBox guest editions while you are booting it like this, so the screen will be rather small. Anyway, it says root at none, but doesn't really matter. I can do whatever I want. I can go ahead and clear the screen. I can cd to root. As you see, I have full access to the system, and from here I can pretty much do anything. For example, I can do init /5. Come on, message file. Do you have start X? Nope, you do not have StartX. Fantastic. I have config. No network configuration either, primarily because I am in this mode, which is fantastic, but it doesn't matter. I can do a lot of things to the system. For example, just to give you an example, here we go. CD home test. So I am in the test, and now I can do pass WD, type in test, and I can change the password for test. I can even do pass WD for root, and I can change the password for root. Let's do that. So pass WD for root, what shall it be? The new password. I'm just gonna type in exactly the same one as I've typed in before, but you get the idea. You can type in whatever you want here. Excellent. So it says passwd password updated successfully. Now what we want to do is reboot and do a regular boot. So we get the graphical user interface as well, and we get full screen here in VirtualBox, and we get a bit of a prettier environment as well. So just go ahead and reboot. You will of course need to undo the changes that have been done. Could not determine the run level. Doing soft reboot. It's better to use shutdown instead. Okay, so this approach comes with certain problems. Let's just power off the machine. You do not wish to power off as well. Amazing. As you can see, this does come with a few drawbacks. It is not as convenient, but oh well, doesn't really matter. What you would do on a physical machine then, if you don't want to bother yourself with figuring out what the problem is here, I of course have to go like this, and you'll probably have to do it like this on your virtualizer, which is probably VirtualBox, but I have seen that some people have been using VMware in the discussion section as they've had some problems with the VirtualBox. As I said, you can either try to figure out what is the problem here, and it says it's better to use shutdown instead of power off on the command line or something like that. You can try typing in some other commands, but honestly, why bother? Just press the reset button on your computer and let that be the end of it. So reset, it's booting up. Welcome to grub. Okay, so proceed to edit. Let's just go and, oh, excellent, that has been deleted by default and it's a clean. So if you mess something up here, just reboot the machine and the cleanup operation will be done for you. Exit from here. I don't really want. Oh, come on, don't bug on me now. Never mind, just gonna reset it again. Not a good idea to do these sort of things in a VirtualBox. They tend to, or pretty much any virtualizer. Maybe on Xen it wouldn't be a problem, but they can present problems in a VirtualBox primarily because it is not a physical machine. It doesn't work in not in exactly the same way. Anyway, I am rebooting it here, and we're gonna get into the system, and we will be root. So not yet, but now we know the password because we have changed it. Although this method does not enable you to actually get the password itself, rather instead it allows you to only change it. But we obviously needed to do that because we need root password if we are to actually access the etc passwd and etc shadow file where the password is actually hashed. And let me just show you that. This is where Linux stores its password. You need to become root for this, and now we know the root password. So let's just type in, well, not nano, but even better, cat etc shadow. Excellent. So you see here it says test, which is my user, and then there is some sort of a hash over here that is not pretty to look at, but what can you really do about it? You can crack it, I suppose, but that's about it. And excellent. And here is the root is the first one, and then there's the hash here as well. Now we need to actually crack this. Let me just go ahead and clear the screen. In the follow-up tutorial, I'm gonna show you how you can actually extract this hash and how you can crack it. Now this particular tutorial, or these few tutorials, will be for a Linux type system, and then we'll move on in the next few tutorials to a Windows based system. But remember that we need to obtain root privileges on a system before, or admin privileges on a Windows system before we will be able to do these sort of things in order to extract the passwords themselves. Why should you do this? I mean, if you already have root access to the system, well, you might want to extract the system password primarily because people tend to repeat the passwords and they might have used it elsewhere or something of a kind, or your contractor might just say, hey, I want the password. I don't necessarily want just root access, but rather instead I want the password for whatever reasons. As I said, people tend to distribute them over the other accounts or something of a kind, and then they can use it to log in elsewhere as well. In any case, I bid you farewell, and I hope to see you in the follow-up tutorial. Okay, so let's just continue up with this follow-up tutorial on John the Ripper. We have obtained root access, and we needed root access in order to have access to etc passwd and etc shadow, where the passwords are stored. Now we need to go ahead and type in as root, remember, unshadow. Yes, my typing skills are amazing. So just type in unshadow slash etc slash passwd and slash etc, which one was it? Shadow. Excellent, and we need to store this into some sort of file. You can name it whatever you want. You can actually smash your keyboard if you wish. I'm gonna go ahead and name mine pass. Press enter. If you do ls, you'll see that there is a pass there. There is indeed a file named pass. We'll just go ahead and type in cat pass. Press enter, and there you go. I have lots of things here, lots of hashes. Actually, maybe not lots of hashes, sorry about that, but you have root, then colon, and here you have a hash, encryption. Then down below somewhere, if I can just find it, there we go. So it says test again, colon, and then you have an encryption there. Let's just go ahead and clear the screen. Now, John has a lot of options here. Let me just switch to full screen mode. And look, you can specify certain rules. You can specify files. So just you do a word list and then read from the word list. You can have a configuration file for the John itself to substitute john.conf, which you can also alter as well. There are literally tons and tons of rules here, depending on what you are cracking, what sort of encryption you are cracking. But the most specific rules are the best one, actually the best ones. That's what I want to say. The best ones are when you can actually specify certain rules on your brute force attack. So let's say, I don't know, I want you to try all the words where the first letter is a capital letter, and then the second letter is, I don't know, then the second letter is lowercase letter or something of a kind, because it is likely that the first letter will be capital, more likely than not. And if you know that the last three characters are actually numbers, you can also do that as well. There are a ton of options. You can do these things with crunch, as I've showed you before, but I just wanted to make a mention of it, that it does exist for John the Ripper as well. However, what people generally tend to use for John the Ripper is / format and then name. Now, name, of course, you will substitute with one of the encryption types, with one of the hashes, so it forces one of these hashes to be decrypted. If you don't know which type of a hash it is, it's not a big deal at all. Don't worry about it. John will be able to figure it out on its own, but it will issue a warning. Look at how many of them there are. There are a lot of them, and as I said, if you don't know which one it is, no big deal. Also, a very nice thing is that you know those files that you download from torrents, and then I don't know, sometimes it says that the file is zipped and that there is a password on it. Well, you can use John the Ripper to actually crack it open. That's very nice as well. But in any case, we're just going to use John with the most basic of options in order to crack the password hashes for a Linux system, as we are cracking system passwords today. You can also use this crack status, emit a status line whenever a password is cracked. If you have a very large file of hashes, you can also use this one to tell you when something is cracked. But you generally just want to leave it to run to the end. Anyway, let's just go ahead and clear the screen. Use John. So just type in JOHN space. It's called John the Ripper, but the command to execute it is just John. And then type in the file that we have previously made. So pass. Press enter. And for you, it's gonna say, I don't know, something like passwords cracked or something like that. For me, it says loaded 2 password hashes with 2 different salts. So yeah, there we go. It says no password hashes left to crack because I have cracked them previously, but it doesn't matter whether you find them here or not. What you want to do is be able to see them later on, and that's the command that is of importance to you regardless of whether you see them here or not. So they'll be probably printed, they will be printed out here. It will say username, password. However, that is not what you want. What you want is John dash dash show. Oops, sorry, pass. Excellent. So you type in John, then you type in space once the John is done completely, and then space dash dash show space, and then the name of the file for which you want to crack the hashes. And then it says, look, root colon test something here, test one. Oh, I'm sorry. It says root colon, and this is the password for root. So you see here, the root account colon, the password for root account is test, and you can just disregard the rest. And the password for our regular user, test colon test. I really should be using something different here other than just pretty much naming everything test, because it can get a bit confusing. That's one of the things that I would suggest to you that you change. But in any case, this cracking process can take a while, so keep that in mind. John the Ripper is not perfect, and of course its performance is dependent on the physical capabilities of your machine. If it's something rather complex and difficult, it's gonna take a lot longer than this. Although there is always that factor of chance that you will be able to figure it out in a relatively short amount of time. In any case, it doesn't cost you a lot to simply give it a shot because you always have a chance. And this is the format that you will get for the files. Make sure to save the files somewhere so that you can always review them later on with John space dash dash show command. Once I just wanted to reiterate once again, it makes no difference of whatsoever that I wasn't shown passwords here because it says no password hashes left to crack. Loaded 2 password hashes with 2 different salts. Doesn't really matter. All of this you will see except this last line, and then instead of the last line you will see something like this. But again, it doesn't matter to you at all, primarily because that's the terminal output. That's the standard output. You don't want to just have it there in the standard output. You want to have it somewhere where you are always able to access it, and that's why after you've cracked them, clear the screen and use John show and then the name of the file in order to list them here, because like that they are permanent, they are stored for good on your computer where you can review them at any later time. You do not want to be memorizing these passwords. And once again, do use something different other than test. You can see I was confused there for a moment, primarily because I use these things. Anyway, I bid you all farewell, and in the follow-up tutorial I'm gonna go ahead and jump into Windows and see what we can actually do there and how can we extract and crack the passwords in Windows or bypass them completely. Until then, I'm gonna call this tutorial here, and I hope to see you there as well. Okay, so in this follow-up tutorial we're gonna be doing this same thing as we did before. However, we're gonna do it on a Windows machine. And to be honest with you, most likely you will be doing this on Windows machines as opposed to Linux machines, primarily because even on rare occasions when Linux users do forget their passwords, and that is quite rare, primarily because they have to type it in over and over and over again to use various things. Whereas on Windows it is not a default feature. It can be set up that way, but it is not by default that you need to type in your administrator password for things. Rather, instead you can just click yes and go through it, which is a bit stupid in my opinion and the opinion of a lot of people out there. But oh well, there definitely is a feature where you can enable it, but I really think it should be enabled by default. Anyway, what I've seen people do lately is, and not lately, but they've been doing this for a while, uh, they take passwords, they take hashed passwords of Windows, and then they crack them elsewhere. Once they have cracked them, they, depending on what sort of protocols have been set up on that machine, they are able to gain remote access or something of a kind. For example, in classrooms, in internet cafes, even though that I mean, you cannot really access that machine from the outside world, uh, in a school facility or a corporate building or something of a kind, if you have the password of that machine, if you have the authentication credentials, if you manage to get in the same LAN, you can actually connect to that machine. Especially because you have a lot of shared folders, disks, and so on and so forth. That can be very problematic. Uh, the biggest danger of this happening is, well, you probably heard about support people misrepresenting themselves as technical support, but really the biggest danger are the employees themselves, and sometimes irresponsible behavior and sometimes deliberate actions, primarily, as I said, in internet cafes, schools, and in corporate buildings. This can be pretty bad because I've seen people utilize like 100 or 200 school computers and they become their bots basically. They control them from a central point, or as they have it these days, they have decentralized bots. And then those computers tend to do all sorts of things for them, which is really bad for that university because all traces, all clues will end up inevitably pointing towards them for whatever activity that person has conducted. And that is why it is not a good, I mean, that is why this sort of an attack is useful. You will be able to recreate the steps of such people and steal the hashes, and then there are various applications for those hashes, what you can do, where you can apply them, how you can utilize them. I mean, it's beyond, I can't even possibly hope to, I can't even hope to count them all here, but it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to give you a brief intro of what people actually use these hashes for on Windows machines. And they are also crackable primarily because people for Windows, they don't put any sort of complex passwords most of the time, so they are crackable more or less. Anyway, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Open up your browser. I have Internet Explorer here. I've been trying it out lately and they have remodeled it quite well, but I still don't like it security-wise. Anyway, uh, as this is my virtual machine, I don't really have a lot of stuff installed here, so I just use the default Internet Explorer and that's it. Anyway, you need to go to this website, www.openwall.com, and you can navigate to this link if you wish. If not, you can immediately type in this link, or you can actually navigate to it on the website. It's pretty simple. There aren't any problems. Anyway, you need to scroll down, and what you need if you're Oops, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Come on, there we go. So it says pw dump 7, and I want you to download that one. There's 6, there's 5, and so on and so. But you see, 6 is Windows 2000, XP, 2003, Vista, and nothing further. PV dump 5 is NT 2000, XP, and 2003, nothing further. That is why you do need pdump 7. There is a question mark after Vista. I'm pretty sure that's like for everything that came afterwards as well. And Quarks, pvdump something. I don't know what this is. Where is the new open source? Okay, I guess you can download the bottom ones as well, but it doesn't really matter. I've realized that pvdump 7 actually does work without any sort of problems of whatsoever on Windows 8.1 Ultimate with all upgrades done. Okay, maybe not with all of them, but I think I didn't do my upgrades for this week or this half of the month or something like that. Anyway, it does work with Windows 8.1, so you don't have to worry about that. you just go ahead and click on download local copy of pwdump7, save as. It's gonna go ahead and save it into your downloads folder. Go ahead and click on save. I already have it. Do you want to replace it? Sure, why not? Running security scan. I wonder what sort of a security scan is Internet Explorer doing. Has completed. Excellent. So I need this is a zip file, so I need definitely something to open it. I would recommend using 7-zip, but I'm 99.99% sure that all of you out there have some sort of a zipping and unzipping software, whether it's the proprietary one or a free version like mine, which is 7-zip. I'm pretty sure that you all have it out there. That's why I'm not gonna include it in this tutorial, primarily because pretty much everybody has it. If somebody needs instructions on how to download and install 7-zip for unzipping files, just leave it in the discussions. I'll be more than happy to help you out there. Anyway, navigate over to your downloads folder. No, not here apparently. Yeah, right. Users, creator, and downloads. So got a lot of things here. I actually don't need to be here. I need to open up 7-zip. Sorry about that. Let me just go ahead and find it. 7-zip file manager. Excellent. So I have opened up my 7-zip, and you need to find pwdump7, and then you need to download John the Ripper as well. So just download John the Ripper 179 Windows binaries zip and download one of the latest free versions, but go further down below where it says download the latest community enhanced version, and then download the latest one here. After that is done, go back to your, just click on that link and it will download. Go back to your extraction software. I'm using 7-zip. Find the file here wherever it may be. So it's pwdump 7-zip, and I need one more. I need john179j5w.zip. Excellent. Click on extract, and I don't need this folder. I'm gonna go ahead and open up my command line, and I have taken the liberty of actually reconfiguring the command line in Windows a bit for my own needs and purposes. I kind of like it this way, so just go ahead and navigate back to your root directory. The root directory here is actually C, just the drive. Unlike Linux, you will notice that the commands are slightly different, and I have no idea why does Microsoft actually use backslash instead of slash. That is so weird. I wish they would change it. That would make my life so much easier. Anyway, what I want you to do here is do dir for directory listing. You can actually use this command in Linux as well, dir, and it will list them. So I have created a file here. I think it's called pass. So just type in mk dir, like in Linux, space pass. I'm gonna name mine pass. You can name this folder whatever you want. This folder name can be anything. You can just smash the keyboard. There you go. And once you have the name of the folder, just press enter. For me, it says a subdirectory file path already exists, primarily because it does already exist. You can actually see it here, but doesn't matter for you. It will create it. And one more thing is necessary. I need to close this terminal. I completely forgot about this. You need to actually run as administrator on the terminal. Well, you don't need it for the creation of the folder, but you do need it for what we are about to do. Anyway, we are now at the extraction port. At the extraction, select path. Path will be local drive C. The folder that you have created, mine is path, and just click OK. That will extract it there. That will extract both of the files there. You can see that I already have them extracted. Both are already there. Anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead and cancel this, close this, doesn't matter. If you encounter any problems with file extraction, or if you need help on installing 7-zip for file extraction, you can use any other software that can unzip files, whether it's proprietary or free or open source. Well, maybe it can be proprietary and open source. In any case, if it's proprietary or free, uh, doesn't really matter as long as it can do the job. Feel free to do it with that software. If you again, if you will fail to do this, just post in the discussion section and I'll be more than happy to tell you how to unzip it. Anyway, let's just go back here. One more. Excellent. So we are back in C. Let's change directory to our newly created folder. Do dir for listing. I'm gonna have one extra folder here. It's pvdump3v2. Just disregard that. Those are my previous attempts to see and test out versions. Will they work or not? So they don't. pvdump7 works. Anyway, what we are about to do is actually dump the password file. So go ahead and enter pvdump. Nope, pvdump7. Excellent. So dir, just a few files here. There is an exif file. You need the exif file, so type in pv. I'm pretty sure that Windows is case insensitive, unlike Linux, but I'm just gonna play it safe here. And now I wish to create a file, same way as in Linux. I'm gonna name it test.txt. Press enter. Oops. What is it? Usage. Dump system passwords. Have you done that? Dir. No, you haven't. Why not? Why? What is the matter? Ah, okay. So here. Ah. No, this is not the case. Sure, this is dump system passwords. Why? Why not? Come on, come on, don't do this to me. It's dump system passwords. Excellent. So it's like this. Oh, I see what the problem was. Of course, I need to redirect the standard output into a file. So you see a bit of a very stupid mistake on my part there. It took away some time, but it doesn't matter. I decided not to cut it out. Just to show you that these things can happen, and I do have a tendency not to cut out my mistakes from the tutorials just so that you can learn from them, although there isn't much that you can learn from this other than to see that I can be rather stupid from time to time. Anyway, you do need a greater than sign in between these commands because you want to dump the output of pwdump7.exe into test.txt, not .exe. If you don't do that, it's just going to print out these things out to the screen, and you can't really utilize them. They're just printed out there. It's standard output. Unless you have placed it in a file or something of a kind, it's completely useless to you. So press enter. This has happened. There, do I have a text.exe? No, fantastic. I have a test.txt, and if I type in notepad.txt, notepad test.txt, press enter. There we go. We have pretty much the same information that has been printed out on the standard output. Anyway, we're not really interested in looking at that file too closely, but one good thing is that you can actually get the usernames, which is fantastic. So all the usernames are here, and you can use them as you choose, and please, all you need is passwords. But even once you have a username, you can even perform some sort of a brute force attack on an FTP or a mail server or whatever. I've showed you how to do that with Hydra on a web server. The procedure is pretty much the same for any other service. You just type in the parameters, just change the parameters a little bit, and that's it. Probably the most complex attack is on a web login service. on websites that have login services on them. Everything else, like attacking an FTP or an SSH or something like that, is piece of cake setup with Hydra, but depending on the password strength, can take a while. Anyway, let's just go ahead and close this file. Now I need to go back and go into... Actually, no, I'm gonna do this the other way around. pv dump 7 there, and now I'm gonna need to type in back once. I'm gonna go back once. That's gonna send me into pass, and then I'm gonna need to go into John and John again, and I need run, sorry. Oh, come on, where is it? Direct. Ah, I just missed it. John.exe. And to this I am going to pass the file test.txt. Excellent. So we have loaded 2 password hashes with no different salts. Administrator, creator. Okay, so I need to actually expand this. Couldn't complete fast. Please report this problem. Okay, so it doesn't really matter. You can see everything that you need to see here. CLS, where, and shells, salts, port. Where is it? Come on, help me out here. Show. Okay, show equal. Okay, so I see. Of course, I need test.txt. I need dash show space. I need to give it the file from which to read, of course. I can't just expect it to figure it out on its own. That was a bit stupid again on my part, but press enter and there you go. Now by default I can't select things here, which is very annoying. I need to go into edit and click on mark, and now I can select things. Amazing system. Anyway, it says administrator, no password, creator, test. So I have a password for my user creator. It's test. I have found it, and now I can use it for all sorts of generally wrong things. What you can use them for, and how to actually attempt to compromise systems, and what you can actually do, how you can exploit them, should I say. We will explore upon that further in the chapter on Metasploit and reverse shells. But for the time being, I just want to show you how you can acquire these passwords, how you can crack them, and later on we will actually utilize them. But this is a very useful skill to have to figure out how to get these passwords. Anyway, I bid you all farewell, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Hello everybody, and welcome to this tutorial. Today I'm going to go over a tool called Hydra. It will enable you to actually attack websites but which actually have login forms. Most of them do have login forms. That's pretty much on all the websites today. You can log in somewhere on some portion of the site or something of a kind. Anyway, it is important to mention that this attack functions regardless whether the protocol is HTTPS or HTTP, because I'm going to be using Damn Vulnerable app. I'm going to be using HTTP, but it's going to work just fine on HTTPS, no problems. So regardless of the encryption, it's going to work. Don't worry about it. Anyway, what does Hydra do for us? How does it help us? Well, it simply enables us to try multiple login credentials over a period of time. So you can try out, I don't know, 20,000 usernames with 20,000 passwords, and so on and so forth. You get the general idea of this. Anyway, let me just go ahead and minimize this. Type in Hydra, and I'm gonna get a mini here for Hydra. Not a lot of things here. It might seem like a lot, but believe me, it is not. So you have the note from the author of Hydra. This is a bit of an interesting segment here. It says, please do not use in military or secret service organizations or for illegal purposes. And down below, you have the syntax. And I know that the syntax, when you look at it like this, it can seem somewhat strange or difficult to comprehend, but believe me, it is not. It is rather simple, of that you can rest assured. All of these brackets and stuff like that can seem a bit complex, but we're going to go over those things, and by the end of this tutorial, you will figure out most of these things. They're not complicated as they might seem in the syntax part. Down below, you immediately see that the amount of options that Hydra has are not it's not substantial. I mean, there's just a few of them here, not that many, so it's not that difficult. You have basically the ability to pass in with a lowercase l to pass in a single login username, or with a capital L to pass a file leading to a dictionary of usernames. You might wonder like how to create these word lists, but you can find some of them on the net. However, it is in a lot of cases, it is a lot better to actually create them yourselves, depending on the site that you are attacking. You want to be able to customize them, you want to adapt them to your own needs. For example, let's say that there is a company somewhere, and that company has a profile on LinkedIn or something like that, and it has a list of its employees there, or it has a list of, or you can find, where you can at least find some of the employees that work for the company on LinkedIn there. So they would probably have something like standardized usernames for employee accounts. Basically, what that means is that you either have first name dot last name, or first name space last name, or first name just last name, nothing in between, something of a kind. So you can get those first names and last names, and you can generate a dictionary from there into a file. To generate a dictionary basically means just put the things that you want to try out into a file, and that's it. So just put the names, usernames, put the names in there, and that's not a really big deal. You can also use Crunch if you wish in order to generate them by default. It's not that difficult. It's pretty simple, straightforward procedure. Anyway, down below you have lowercase p for password, so you can pass in a single password and then try it against multiple usernames. Not a bad idea, but can be bad. Can be bad, but primarily because there's a low probability of success. But if you have managed to gather some information, if you know something more, usually people use brute force when they've acquired at least some bits and portions of information that you can really acquire realistically by just browsing the web. You can also pass a password file, you can pass a username file and a password file, and that's gonna use combinations from both. Anyway, down below there is a very neat option. There's -C, and then you specify a file. Where it says file, you just specify the path to that file. Same thing goes for here and here. Here, instead of login, you would just type in a login name, and here, instead of a pass, you would just type in the password that you wish to try, as opposed to writing a path to a file here. Anyway, -C space file, it's a colon separated thing, so you can type in a login username, and right next to a username you can type in a password. It says here, instead of -L and -B options. Now you might think, oh well, who's gonna make this tedious list or something like that? And sure, I can download it somewhere from the net, but why not just use them separately and see what I can get from there? Well, how about this? Now, I have personally used this -C for routers. Now, for example, a company, well, not really a company, a small firm, they had like different routers within their buildings. Some were for wireless, and those were of one brand, and they had their main gateway, default gateway, which was the exit to the outer world, which was of a completely different brand. And then they had their interior routers for just from the main gateway, cable goes to this router, and then this router covers wirelessly this room, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. There was a whole spread. And then I used this -C to basically test out the default usernames and passwords for all those routers, just to see if any of those routers actually contains a default username or a default username password combination. Now, there aren't a lot of them, but different manufacturers, and I know you think, oh, well, why do you need it? It's just admin, right? So you can just put in one entry. Well, no. Different manufacturers have different default credentials on their routers. Sure, a lot of the time, let's face it, it's just admin. But for some manufacturers, it can be UBNT for both username and password, I think. It can be root, and then for a password, it can be TOOR, just reverse of root. And you'll have these variations that you can find on the net. You can just type in default router passwords, and you can find all of them pretty much. So I just loaded up the list and attempted these. This saves you a lot of time. It doesn't raise that many. It can raise flags because default credentials have been attempted, but it doesn't raise any flags in a sense that you're not making too many attempts. I mean, you're making a couple of attempts per router, moving on, a couple of attempts moving on, and so on and so forth. And with that, you can pretty much scan the entire network, whether it contains default credentials. If any of them contains default credentials, you have immediately found one weakness that you can write in your report. So that's a bit of an easy test, which saves you a lot of time. Anyway, down below, you can use this in combination with -C, and let me tell you something. Your routers, your home routers, usually get probed twice or thrice per a day by some IP address from God knows where, probing it for default credentials. Pretty much everyone's routers gets probed with this once. You can pass a file with a -M option, which is a list of servers to attack, basically a list of IP addresses, and people from different parts of the world, they tend to pass these files, and they pass every single IP on the planet. They basically mass scan the internet. They use Nmap to mass scan the internet, and then they load up live hosts with IP addresses to this file and what this file, and then pass this file to Hydra, which in turn attempts default login credentials, and if the default login credentials succeed, then they can be passed to different scripts that can do different things. So basically, people have been known to alter DNS settings on massive scales, because if you get maybe 1 million routers which have default credentials in their homes, and if you redirect all of their DNS requests to yourself, you can imagine the possibilities. I mean, you'll be able to do a lot. From redirecting all of their traffic to a certain site to basically exploiting them with some sort of basically zombifying them, making them bots or something of a kind. Options are countless there. It would be even pointless to start listing them. But anyway, that's what people do generally. If you check out the log files, usually they'll get probed once or twice, maybe thrice per day. Anyway, the best way to protect this is simply to change the default user credentials, and as soon as the script sees that that the default ones are not used, who cares? It's just going to move on. Also, different telecoms in different countries use different default credentials for different router brands. These default credentials are always public. Most of the time they're public, and you can actually find them out on the net. So in a certain country, there are default credentials for that particular internet service provider that it uses on its router. So just before you conduct any sort of brute force attack, don't just go all out and try to hammer your way. I'd rather instead do a bit of research, do a bit of footprinting, try to figure out any additional information that can actually help you out. Anything is useful. Anything new that you learn is useful, and it can significantly lower the time of your brute force attack, and it can significantly reduce the possibility of a red flag. Down below, you have an option. It's T for tasks. Basically, this is the amount of threads that's going to run. Threads are processes which can run simultaneously or give an illusion of simultaneous operations. It says run tasks, number of connects in parallel. So per host default 16. So it's per one host, it's going to attempt 16 connections at relatively the same time. The differences are trivial, like nanoseconds, so it doesn't really matter. Pretty sure it's nanoseconds. It could be some other measurement, but doesn't matter. The difference between the timer execution, between the execution of the threads. Anyway, you can specify a different amount of threads depending on what your processor can handle and depending on how obvious do you want this attack to be, because if you issue a lot of them, somebody on the other side is going to see that there are a lot of connections coming in at this pretty much the same time, so it's going to be obvious that there is something amiss. And you have -u, we're going to skip that for now. -help, it's a complete help, and okay, there are some other options down below, but for the time being, they're not that important. I would strongly advise you to check them out, as they also provide for different vectors of attack. For the time being, I want to show you how to attack a website login, and what I've told you now is specifically related to that purpose. Anyway, let's just go ahead and see how a Hydra command would look like. So you would just type in Hydra and then -l either for users or -l for a user. Actually, you have an example here, but look, this part is not difficult. So this you can do, this anybody can do, but that is not what we are here for to do. We need to get this part. This is for an FTP server, which is something we're not going to do today. You can see for FTP it's really simple. There isn't really that much logic to it. Rather, instead, we want to attack an HTTP website. Same procedure would apply for HTTPS if I'm not mistaken. It's going to work for HTTPS for sure, but I do believe that pretty much the same procedure applies. You just need to specify that it's HTTPS. Anyway, what we need is these field names. So we need a field name of username and we need a field name of password. So what we need to do is right-click on the website, inspect element. Sorry, no, not inspect element. View page source. View selection. Come on, don't do this to me. View selection source. Excellent. Or most of the time you're going to see view page source. So you will need to be able to find username fields and password fields in order to actually do this, and you will also need the login submit button. Anyway, you can also do this with burp suite. I've showed you this in the previous tutorial in the SQL injections, where we've actually extracted a cookie. Using exactly the same procedure, you can also get these things as well. But in this tutorial, I wanted to show a bit of a different method, perhaps a bit easier method to actually figure these things out. But it's pretty easy here on the Damn Vulnerable app, primarily because you can get these individual sections and take a look at them like this. But if we, for example, open up any other website like Kali Docs, oh wait, and let's see, view page source, you can see how a page source will look like. It's clumsy, it's long. I'm not saying that this code is clumsy, but it might appear like that, and it's pretty long, so yeah, it's gonna take a while I mean, you're gonna find it eventually, but it might take a while to actually figure out where is what. I would suggest using a Control F option and type in just user. Okay, it doesn't, this particular website doesn't have a login form if I'm correct. Yep, it doesn't actually have a login form, but it doesn't matter. You just type in username and Control F or something of a kind, and then just sweep through the source of the website in order to find whatever it is that you are looking for. In this particular case, we are looking for the username and password forms. So go ahead and right-click, view page source, and in our case, view section source, because this allows you to see actually different sections separately. It's a lot easier that way. What we will need here is name, which will be username, and password for name. For the field, it's password. We will need these two. we will need the portion of the address, and we will also need the IP address of the server, which is if config. Excellent. So this is the IP address of our server. How to find the IP address of that particular server, I've showed that in the previous tutorials. So those are the things that we're going to need in the follow-up tutorial, where we will actually conduct a brute forcing attack. I did take this time to actually explain all the options, because Hydra, it can be complicated from time to time, especially with this last section. Pass the username and pass the password. You need to pass in additional parameters, which can get a little bit tricky. You will see soon why. Anyway, I bid you all farewell, and I hope to see you in the follow-up tutorial. Hello everybody, and welcome to this tutorial. Today I'm just going to go ahead and start using Hydra immediately. You can see that I have like 100,000 things open down below, but you don't have to concern yourselves with all of them. Anyway, let me just zoom this in a little bit. There we go. Full screen, fantastic. Now, I have ran a command before, and I have it here. So let's just go over it. But before we do, a quick thing to do is just do a nano pass list. Excellent. So I've created a password list for myself here. Now, of course, this would be a pretty stupid thing to do if you were actually cracking a password somewhere on a website. Rather, instead, you should definitely download a password list from somewhere. There are plenty of them on the net. Just type in password list for dictionary attacks. You won't find a shortage of them. I guarantee it to you. But why should you do this then? What I did? Why didn't I just download it from the net? Well, Hydra is notorious for not doing what you intended it to do. I mean, the tool does function. The tool is properly coded. The code is fine, but because of the parameters that people tend to pass to it, especially for HTTP and HTTPS versions of attack, when you are attacking a website login form, it gets confused a lot in between what is a proper username and what are proper login credentials and what are not, because you need to provide a message to Hydra, what message that will basically, once it receives that message, it knows that the credentials are false, and every time it doesn't receive that message, it will assume that the credentials are correct. Hydra doesn't actually do anything else. And because of this, it can get confused a lot, and you do need to pass that long URL parameter for login site. So there are some problems that can happen, and that is why it is good to create your own password list that is very short, and to test out your attack. Test it out on your local web server, or test it out on the server that you wish to attack. But if you can log into that server with some sort of visitor or guest account or something like that, just create some nonsensical account with nonsensical information there. That would be great. And see if this attack works. Try out these passwords. If it finds the right password, great. And don't just run the test once. Run it like 2-4 times, not in a row preferably, but over the period of 2 days or something like that, or more. And if both tests find successful passwords, then you're good to go. Then you know that Hydra is functioning fine. What you do not want to do is load up a dictionary of 8 million passwords and like 10 million usernames and start your brute forcing attack over the period of a couple of weeks, just to find out in the end that you actually failed to pass right parameters. 2 weeks of wasted time. So just create a file like this. It's pretty simple. Type in nano and then space name of your file, just like I've typed in a second ago, and then you can type in whatever you want here. It doesn't really matter. Control O to save, press enter for pass list. That's going to be the name of our pass list here. And Control X to exit. You can name it any way you like, quite literally. It doesn't really matter. Let's go ahead and clear the screen there. Now what we need to do is find that command that I've used. Excellent. So it says Hydra and then -L for admin, space -P for pass list, capital P, the IP address of the server, the method. Okay, so there's a difference here. The previous one was get, this one is post. Reason for that: I'm actually attacking the front login site of the damn vulnerable app with Hydra. I have discovered some of the complications inside, so I didn't want to put you through it, as you would get a lot of errors and problems around it. And generally you will want, and that, to be quite honest, that is not a realistic scenario in the first place. Primarily because you've already logged into something, and then while you're logged into something, you want to brute force something behind, you want to brute force another login behind the login, which is, I don't know, I suppose you can find such scenarios in the world, but it is not very likely that you will encounter that. Far more likely option to encounter is the one that we are seeing here before us, and this is far more realistic anyway. So I've already attempted to log in. It says login failed. If I reload the site, I'm going to burp suit, so I'm just going to forward this. Excellent. So we have this DVWA. We can copy this as I've showed you in the previous tutorial. The procedure is exactly the same. There are no differences here. But I just want to show you that you can also do this in burp suit in a very nice fashion. So you can go here into headers, and you can immediately see what you are requesting here. You will of course disregard the HTTP/1.1, sorry, not, yeah, 1.1 request. Rather, instead, you will just copy this first part of this header. We got some hex here that's completely irrelevant to us, some parameters here, anyway. But you also have it here. It says get, and then you have it here again in the same form, but you can actually copy paste it from here, while from headers I don't know, it's possible, but you have to like cut it and do stuff to it. Here you can just do this and then copy paste to wherever you want. Anyway, even though the method is get to call the website, we are yet to attempt a login. So if I forward this, excellent. And now I'm going to attempt a login. Where is it? Excellent. So you see here it's post. As soon as you don't see your credentials being passed in the URL space of your browser, it should be post, if I'm not mistaken. If they're passed in the URL, it's get, but just try some random login, smash against your keyboard, and you can also figure it out in burp suit. You can use the burp suit in the same way I've showed in the previous tutorials, and here you can figure out that it's post. But anyway, you don't actually need to use burp suit. I've showed you how you can get it from page source. Pretty much that is a universal rule for any site out there, and here you can see the username fields and password fields, etc. You can even get the session ID here, but all of that you can get through your browser. Also, one more thing to note is that the security is set on high. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and forward this, minimize this as I don't really need it, and come back into the Hydra command. So http-post-form space, and then I open up my quotation marks. We need to type in /dvwa-1.0.8/login php. Now we've actually copied this part up till here, and then I've typed in a colon in order to separate the fields. The next field that I need to use is username. Do I still have it here? No. Okay, so it's just easier for me to look at it in burp suit now, but you can look at it wherever you like in Firefox as well. Just go ahead and forward that information, and let's go. Will this work? Tell me. Yep, there we go. Excellent. So here you see username equals. Again, you can do all of this the way I showed you in the previous tutorial, just extract information from page source, but it's a bit easier to see them in burp suit. Username equals, and then I would of course copy that part, and here you go. Surely enough, it says username equals. I've copied that part. Now this is the part that belongs to the website, and this part here belongs to Hydra. So you type in a caret sign, user with capital letters, and then caret sign again to close it. So this part tells Hydra where to insert username, and this is the field name on the website, equals, and then Hydra will insert values there. And %, password, again, in burp suit, you can see that it's actually n% and then password. Forget about this random value here. This is just a username that I basically smashed my fingers against the keyboard and attempted a login just to get this form here, and just to get this information here, which I can later on utilize, that I am utilizing now. So the next field is, not the next field, but the extension to this field is basically n% password equals, and then we have it here again, and n% password equals, we open up caret signs, basically like quotation, but I don't know, they just said, okay, it's going to be caret signs, and in between them, just type in pass, like write it exactly as I've typed it in here. So for password, it's always PASS, and for username, it's user, basically, just all capital letters. You are telling Hydra, but these field names, they can I suppose they can be changed depending on what the web developer has intended them to be, but it doesn't matter. I don't know, somewhere instead of a password you can say a pin or something of a kind, but you do need to check that with a website in the source code of the website that you can view by right-click view source or use a burp suit proxy as I've showed in the previous tutorials, and then you will be able to figure it out. Yeah, never mind. Excellent. So past the password, you have n% login. So let's just go to the burp suite and see what's up there. So it does really say that the extension of this field is n% login and it equals login. It is so indeed, and we copy it and paste it here. There is no need to actually do any alterations there. Login will equal login. Hydra will not insert anything there. Now the third field that we need to pass, so this is one field, colon, colon, this is the second field, colon again here, and this will be a third field. Now the third field actually is the marker field, so that pretty much, that is something that Hydra is looking for, and if it gets that, it knows that it knows that it's an invalid combination of a username and the passwords. If we just open up our browser back up again, it says here at the bottom of the page, login failed. So just try to find some message after you have typed in some random credentials, whatever, and press login. Find a message that basically says login failed. This login failed, I don't know, can be on any portion of this site, but it will be there. Don't worry about it. There is always a message when you fail to log in. So you just copy, paste that message here. If you, okay, so obviously you can copy it from here, but you can also say view selection source, and then you got login failed there as well. I can't actually click on view page source here. It's still loading, some messing up with burp suit, I guess, but it does not really matter. This message won't be the same. It will vary from one site to the next, and its position will vary from one site to the next. And even if I had shown you the source code for this particular site, I mean, you can see it yourselves. It's going to be in one place, but just try opening up any other site and do a deliberate fail of login. Just type in some random credentials and then do right-click view source. You will see that you get a different message. It doesn't necessarily need to say login failed. You can just say failed or incorrect username and password or something of a kind. The messages will be different. There is no direct procedure to determine this other than just by saying reasoning. Just take a look at your screen and view the message, then view the source code and copy it from there. Anyway, quotation marks closed here, space, dash, capital V for verbose output. Why capital V? I think that's for extra verbose output if I'm not mistaken. I think that's why I placed it there, but I'm pretty sure that the lowercase v would function just the same. Anyway, if I press enter now, this is gonna go and work, even though there are just a few. You see, it actually tries them all out because the amount of threads that it's running is 16. You can increase the amount of threads by adding a dash T space. I think it supports maximum 64, 32 threads. I'm not sure. Also depends on your actual computer how much it can handle. Anyway, it says on port 80, HTTP post form, host, and then it says login, admin, password is password. Now, it is always a good idea to do a lot of research prior to, as I've stated in the previous tutorial, prior to doing this, primarily because you won't necessarily have some sort of complex login credentials because they are rarely found anywhere, primarily because people don't bother with that. But you will want to know more about those login credentials. You will want to learn at least something before you attempt to do this sort of an attack, because if you know nothing, this sort of an attack can last for an eternity of time and you're most likely gonna get discovered by the administrator. Do you also, I advise you to use this in combination with some sort of proxy or something of a kind. Also, a very nice thing to do is to go ahead and click on Applications, Kali Linux, Password Attacks, Online Attacks, Hydra-GTK. And here you have a graphical user interface for Hydra GTK, for Hydra, just GTK for graphics. Here you can choose like single target, target list, specify a port. You can specify all these things via command line as well. You can specify a protocol here. Down here you can say SSL, use the SSL, beaverbose, show attempts, debug, complete help after failure. And at the bottom of this screen that I'm spinning now, you can see that the actual command is down there. That command changes as you change values. So I'm going to say FTP. You can see it changed to FTP. I'm going to say HTTP proxy, and it's also changed, but you can't see the whole thing. Ah, come on. Yep, there we go. It says now HTTP proxy. The letters are pretty small here, but doesn't really matter. Just take a look at this graphical user interface tool if you're interested. All of these things you can do via command line, all of them. There's no difference there. You can specify a username list, password, use colon separated files, try login as password, try empty password, try reverse login, pretty much self-explanatory things. Number of tasks, here it's set by default to 16, but you can increase. You can also tell it to exit after first pair found per host if you're passing a file of multiple hosts. And you can say exit after first pair found on a global level. So if you find some login credentials for any of the hosts, just stop. Here you can specify a proxy to be used, not a bad idea either. So it says specific. That where it says HTTP/HTTPS URL, there you would pass these parameters. There you would pass what is in the quotation marks here, something of a kind, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm just showing you if you're curious, so feel free to explore. And here it starts. So you say start, stop, save output, clear output. Clear output clears the screen, and save output saves it to a file, self-explanatory as well. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that, as I said, if you are curious or something of a kind, but this is how you should use it. Use the command line tool via terminal. Always better to learn it this way, always better to use it this way, but I don't know. If you want to play around with the graphics as well, feel free to do so. I do encourage you to do both. Anyway, I bid you all farewell, and I urge you to experiment more with Hydra, try different parameters, try different places legally, and see how that works out for you, because this part will continuously change and it will be different from one website to the other. This part won't change. This part won't change, but everything else within the quotation marks will pretty much change from one website to the other. This part, this part is straightforward. As I said, there isn't that much thought that you need to invest here. It's fairly easy, but invest a lot of time into figuring this part out, and once that works out, the rest is easy. It's always going to work, no problems. Anyway, now I bid you farewell, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial.